So now let's take a look at some of the most common vibration modes and get an understanding of the allowable paths that an engine can take. So here we see a typical engine package, and as you can see from this picture, on the front there's the typical front engine mount. This could be a single piece isolator, it could be a two-piece isolator, and on the rear section of the mount we have another configuration of a mount. Again, these could be single or these could be dual. Just below that, you'll see some of our most popular and common solutions. We can determine which one is best for you based on the type of application it is. Like, is this engine in a stationary in-plant, or is this on-highway or off-highway vehicle where we'd have to look at different styles of mount? Well, we can determine that as we go through your engine profile. So here, what we want to one of the main things that we want to understand is what are the motion paths of an engine set, and we can break this down into two distinct categories. If you look at items 1 to 3, which is lateral, fore-aft, and vertical, you can think of these as translations along each one of the axes of the X, Y, and Z axis. And conversely, we also look at items 4 to 6, which is roll, pitch, and yaw, and those would be rotations about each one of those axes. These become important to understand as we look at how the motion of the engine can go and what are the disturbances that are being fired by the engine and how that's going to react. So we'll start off with the lateral motion, and in this particular case, we are looking at the translation or the side-to-side movement along the x-axis. And you can see how this has an influence on how the mount is going to deflect. Similarly, we look at the translation along the x-axis. In this case, this is the fore and aft, so you see the motion forward and back. And also, the third translation mode here is the vertical disturbance, or the path, which is the up and down motion. So we look at these as the translation mode. So again, this is the motion of the engine along the axis, side to side, front to back, top to bottom. So a little bit different than the translation modes is we look at the rotation about each one of these axes. So in this illustration, we show that the motion of the roll, or the rotation about the x-axis. Next up, we have the rotation about the y-axis. So this is the pitch. This is the pitch forward and back. Now, lastly, the third rotation is about the z-axis, or the yaw. So this is rotation about the vertical axis. And you can see the effect that this has on each mount configuration. This becomes important as we look at the primary disturbances. Again, this is just a summary: roll, pitch, and yaw, rotation about each axis. So now that we have an understanding of what the allowable motion is, we start to look at what is the primary disturbance from the engine package itself on some of these systems and the motions that we're going to look at. We'll start off with just looking at 3 of the most common engine packages that we isolate. The first one being the 3-cylinder engine. These tend to be the most challenging to isolate just due to the complexity of the low frequency and multiple directions of excitations. So you can see in this illustration, the 3 things that we look at most common for a typical 3-cylinder engine is the pitch and yaw, which are usually inertial imbalances, as well as the second order roll gas pressure. So those are rolling about the x-axis. You can see there's a number of different rotations and modes that we're looking at. We treat each one of those separately in order to isolate and make sure that the isolation path through each one of these modes is taken care of. This would be common for a typical 4-cylinder engine. These start to become a little bit more balanced. So we're looking at the second order vertical, which is inertia. And we'll also be looking at the disturbance mode from the second order roll. So again, this is a rotation about the x-axis. The third most common one is the 6-cylinder inline engine. These tend to be a little bit more balanced, but we wanted to make sure that we're taking into account the roll from the gas pressure. So this and the roll. So while the 3, 4, and 6 are the most common, we also take a look at any other engine packages. This is just a summary. Certainly the V6, the inline 8, V8, V12, V6, they have their own disturbances in each one of those modes. So we will look at those separately. These tend to be a little bit less common. We will certainly look at them the same way as we treat the 3, 4, and 6. So with the primary disturbances out of the way, we often get questions from our customers